Welcome back to the Good Marshals Universal Podcast. I'm Dan Bernardo, Keith Mosier, Bo Davis. All right. I'm going to ask a really simple question. What is the most difficult aspect of your martial art?
To relax. To relax, especially for guys, but even for ladies.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's universal.
Just to let go. And the hardest thing is to tell people, relax, just let go. Like a video you posted just today about just getting the angle and getting the position in order to get an arm bar. Yeah, if you just move into the right place, it's just like,
Yep.
If you don't move into the right place, you fight it. And teaching people to do these techniques, as you pointed out in your video, if the armbar doesn't just come, you force it.
Mm-hmm.
That's everybody's response. Everybody's response is, this is supposed to happen, it's supposed to go this way, and try and force it. And especially for the stronger guys, the forcing works, which reinforces them doing it incorrectly. For the weaker individuals, regardless of sex, when it doesn't work, the only option is to force it. Instead of saying, no, I need to step back and train better and work it until I get to the right place. So the hardest thing to teach people is how to relax or do relax. I think also people walk in the door, I'm going to do a martial art. Well, that's all by its very nature rough and tough. And then so the techniques must be done that way. But good technique, good Kung Fu in particular, is not that. It is almost the antithesis of that. It should not be hard. Kempo, or sometimes people pride themselves on building up the strength, and that is part of it, especially for some people who train. And I'm not saying it doesn't not exist. But the techniques really only work if you're relaxed. And that's just hard. Hard to teach people. I can say I got a sign I had more than one sign. One end of the building I've got a wooden carved sign that says relaxed, and at the other end there's a big banner that says relax. Right? One of my favorite discussions is sometimes I'll go to the whiteboard and I'll write relax in very sharp letters with an exclamation point. And I'll ask the class, can you do that? And I'll go, sure you can. You can relax! There's no way you can relax! You cannot must relax! You cannot have to relax! You can only relax. And then I'll write it in cursive. That you can do.
Very easy. I feel like a lot of people try to put forth too much effort sometimes on something instead of just like taking a minute and going, let me look at this for what it is. Just this. I feel like that's why I blurted out angles. Because it's like, just take a minute, look at this. Alright, now, one by one, kind of just add on. For me, that's usually the toughest thing because we're dealing with swords, like edge alignment's an angle, everything in the bind's an angle, everything before the bind's angle based. Constantly having to teach, like I call it like physical geometry, can be a little tiring, but there are some things at the same time where I'm like, I can't really teach that. Like I can teach people how to press when they're fighting, but I can't teach them to be aggressive necessarily. Some people just aren't aggressive. So I've tried teaching someone to be aggressive once. That blew up in my face. So I guess don't teach people things that you can't teach. That's a big one. There's some things that just can't be taught. And definitely aggression is kind of one that falls into that category. But there's plenty more to it than that, I'm sure.
There's taught and learned. And I think we
Yeah.
discussed this before. I know I talk about it a lot. Your dad can teach you how to pedal the bicycle, how to steer the bicycle, how to apply the brakes on the bicycle. Your dad cannot teach you balance. You have to get on the bicycle and fall off to learn balance. Aggression is more likely a learned trait and not a taught trait. Though, from our perspective, you can, and then we discussed this too, you can lead by example.
Yeah.
There is a time to be aggressive and a time not.
Be aggressive. Be aggressive.
Well, the ability, okay, this is a fight for my life, I've got to turn that switch on. Versus, no, you're training with this is a friend of yours. You've got to turn that switch off. No, you're going into the ring. There's an in-between.
It's like holding the light switch when you're a kid, kind of like in between both of the
Yeah.
knobs and trying to play
Yeah.
with it.
Yeah.
Turn it on and off just a little
Right at
motion.
that spot.
Yeah.
Again, to the same doing if you're being aggressive with your partner, you're going to lose partners and you're not going to get to train because you're going to break somebody's arm.
Yeah.
Versus relaxing and learning when to be aggressive or when not to be aggressive. As good teachers, that should be a thing where you lead by example.
I think being aggressive is it's not something that you can teach. There's a certain person who is already so,
Yeah.
and so you have to teach them control.
Mm.
And then there are other people who are not naturally aggressive. You still have to teach control.
That one.
You
Yeah.
have to
That's a
teach
magic
them,
word.
you
Yeah.
have to teach them to relax.
Relax is a hard thing,
It is hard.
when and I'll be completely honest, I despise the word. I try not to use it ever. Mainly because, especially within a Taiji internal framework, we instead want to create song, which is a release. It's a filling of the joint. It is not a relaxation. A lot of the times when, you tell somebody, like, Bo, I want you to tense up. Yes, now relax. All you did was you took the tension from your shoulders and put it into your lower back. You didn't actually relax. You didn't actually open your joints and make yourself a good, and to make your body strong and efficient, right? So sometimes when we say relax, all we really do is we create a bad posture. And so that's one of the reasons why I don't like the use of the word. But again, that's a semantic issue. The thing I think we have to be careful with is we can only teach a person how to meet an objective. I can't teach them what do you call it? I can't teach them violence. I can't teach them aggression. I can't teach them that thing that they will need to switch on, right?
Yeah.
I can't teach them that. What I can do is I can give them an environment in which they are regularly immersed in this sort of environment that requires them to move their body in a specific way that puts them in a good position, et cetera, et cetera. That's why I always say that posture is more important than anything else. So that when something does happen out there, it's more familiar, and so they don't have to switch something on. It's something that's just kind of like, oh yeah, I do this every Tuesday and Thursday. Like, you know, I do this every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or, you know, whatever, right? I do think teaching somebody to relax, teaching somebody to song is incredibly difficult. And it might be the most difficult thing to teach in my system. But I think even more difficult is footwork.
Going back to relax for a moment, relaxing is one of those things that cannot be taught. It has to be learned. But as an instructor, you have to make it apparent, this is something you need to learn.
You can guide them
Yeah.
with drills and
Drills,
things like that.
and even pointing out, you know, hey,
Like push answers and things.
right, and pointing out you need to relax a little bit. And then you have to define it, unfortunately. Relax does not mean limp.
No.
Aggression does not mean tight. Everywhere there, you have these things that they have to learn, and the internals that they have to learn. You have to guide them, and you have to use language and kind of tack around the actual issue until they eventually acquire it through drills. And I've heard that so many times. Oh, this is the feeling you're talking about. Yes, that. Yeah, now you're getting it. I can see it. I would say footwork is a physical thing that is often very difficult to teach, probably one of the hardest, because individuals always come into a martial art focusing on the hands.
But we're humans.
Yeah, we look at it,
Everything that we do is manual.
right.
Right?
But really the key is in the footwork. But then I would have to layer onto it, footwork only works when you're relaxed.
But the cool part about it is
Yeah.
when you teach footwork, it requires you almost sometimes.
Sometimes
Right?
sometimes it does.
Like when we do Tai Chi walking, purpose of Tai Chi walking is to subtly shift your balance and make sure that the foot goes out without any balance until you know that your foot is on the ground. Now I can start to shift my weight.
Right.
I'm going to shift my weight to this one, and I'm not going to pick this one up until all my weight's on this one. And I can pick it up, and then I can do whatever I want with it, right?
Yep.
So a lot of, but your angles, it's all footwork. Relaxation.
I've been
it's all
playing
footwork.
with the angles of footwork, which that's been difficult, but that also goes into measure. That's kind of one of those things where I can teach you what measure
Mind
is,
control. It's all
but can I teach you
Yeah,
measure?
all of the footwork.
You absolutely
it's all
can,
of
with
it.
footwork.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I can teach what it is, but they have to find their own.
So part of that, and again, like, you know, 99.9 repeating % of your martial art has to be learned, not taught.
Yeah,
But you still have to teach.
yeah,
So there are ways. So when we teach, we are not. It's not like it's not a memorization, right? So it's not like vocabulary. We're not teaching a vocabulary. We're teaching a language. That's a very, very big difference, right? We've had this discussion before where martial arts is not just repeating a rote memorized conversation, right?
yeah. No,
It is the ability to hold a live conversation with somebody who is going to ask you and say things that you are not planning for.
Yeah,
And so yes, like absolutely, your student has to discover much of this themselves. But so what we do is we give them drills, we give them forms, we give them games, we give them whatever we want to give them out there for them to discover. Oh, this
Yeah.
is what range. Like I had the little itty bitty kids, right? I put the dot out on the floor, and they put one foot on the dot, and I say, keep that foot on the dot, but touch the sword with your hand. Oh, they figured out how to do a passing step. Great, right? Okay, now I want you to be able to touch the sword, but you have to keep one foot on the dot, but I need you to touch it with the other foot forward. Oh, they discovered a pendulum step. Oh, right. So like footwork teaches these things, and people can figure out where they need to be, but it goes back to that arm bar video, right? Like
Right.
the only way that you can put yourself in a position to efficiently so that you don't have to wrench, so that you don't have to use a whole lot of effort, is footwork.
So like if you continue the analogy of language, or as a teacher, you must present to them grammar or sentence structure. Okay?
I like the way you're putting that. Yeah.
So yes, they have to learn their own, and everybody's going to be different. Jason at 6 foot, whatever, his use of technique is going to be somewhat different, but it must mold to his body. But in Wing Chun, Song Tao, the various forms, and the drills that are used are, here's some good, clear sentence structures that you can play with, and you find what works for you. It is always an amalgam of teach and learn. You can't learn, well, it has been said one way to teach a martial art is to put two guys inside the building and say beat each other up.
Who said that?
We
Someone
know.
crazy.
Yeah. But you would learn something, but eventually,
something, no,
eventually the guy who
worthwhile.
gets beat up all the time would stop coming. That's the person who needs it the most.
Right.
The natural athlete would always win out. So what you do is you take the person who's not the natural athlete, and while I cannot make them do the things I do, I can say, here's a sentence structure for you to play with. Here's a grammatical point for you to deal with. You present those, that's teaching. Their ability to eventually get it when the light bulb goes on, that is because of some internal learning.
Please make sure that you like and subscribe and
Comment. Did I say comment? Comment.
Comment.
are we
Comment.
sure we want them to comment?
Yes,
All right, fine.
Hit the notification bell so you know when we upload next.
yeah.
Peace out.
Peace.